this report represents the findings of a service evaluation which was conducted through a collaboration with Engage with Age and Queen's University Belfast. And we identified 4 key themes, which again Lauren has given us: enablers to participation, barriers, alternatives to hubs for those for whom it's not suitable, and sustainability. An overview of these key findings is presented now, and it's supported by our participant quotations, which our fine actors are going to illuminate for us. So to start with enablers to participation, Engage with Age undertakes a wide range of work with older people, and many of them are actively engaged within their communities. And the HOPE project was specifically working with older people who were at risk of becoming socially excluded or experiencing loneliness and isolation. And the programme presented opportunities to become more involved in activities which interest them and which increase their social contacts and increase their overall well-being. The beginning of this journey is primarily started through referrals from doctors or from social workers or family members who see firsthand the impact that social isolation has on their relative. Development officers and older people themselves identified and highlighted key factors which facilitated engagement in a hub project. And these are referred to as factors which promote an older person getting there and factors which facilitated them staying there. So, starting with getting older people to attend the hub. Importantly, the pivotal role of, slightly less pronounced letter P apparently, the beginning of the relationship with HOPE. A referred person is linked with a development officer who conducts one-to-one meetings with them. And the goal of these meetings is to assess the type of activities an older person is interested in and what their particular and often very complex needs are, and then to identify a hub which might suit them in particular. And the process of those one-to-one meetings with the development officer appeared to be absolutely pivotal.
You meet your clients and you know what their needs are. The difference is, talking to them and inviting them along instead of getting a leaflet through the door saying, hey, there's something on.
Many participants had disengaged from social activity from some time prior to the referral to the HOPE project, and often a lack of confidence and an ambiguity about what getting involved meant. It meant that the process of encouraging the older person to become part of HOPE involved in building a relationship and gaining trust and working through a resistance to change and involvement. Prior to their engagement with HOPE, many participants identified a loss or a particular change in their life which left them feeling isolated and reluctant to engage.
After my wife had died, I didn't want to do anything. And it was my daughter came in. Oh, you have to get out, Dad. You haven't seen anybody in 3 weeks, and you're sitting here and it's making you worse.
This personal contact was highlighted as being essential to encouraging people to join groups, particularly if they have been alone or isolated for some time. The investment of time, again, was a crucial enabler. Engaging with and motivating many of the older people to get involved required a considerable investment in the time from the development officer. For example, one development officer identified 4 individual visits with a particular older person before they considered even visiting a hub.
With the right approach and a bit of encouragement, sometimes it can take maybe 3 or 4 visits and talking things through, and the person decides, maybe I will give it a go. It's always worth the effort to stick with the person.
A number of involved participants discussed the persistence, or in one instance described it as the stalking, of a development officer as being the primary reason that they actually became involved in the hubs in the first place. And this also often involved a staged approach. One-to-one visits took place in a person's home, and then they moved outside the home, taking that person out for coffee, to help them overcome those long-established barriers that had them becoming isolated in the first place. Older people themselves identified this persistence as a key factor in attendance.
It was all her. She'd known I hadn't been seeing anyone, and when the hub was up and running, she'd passed my name on and I'd get a phone call in and then a visit, and then I was being tortured to go to this. And look at me now, on the committee and everything.
Yeah. Encouraging people to stay in the hub. So initially we had to get people to go to the hub in the first place and then encourage them to actually stay. So important enablers here were making connections within the hub when you actually attended. So while personal connection was seen as a crucial area in encouraging participation. It was also crucial that personal contact and that welcome was an intrinsic part of the overall running of hub projects. This was identified as a key factor in retaining members in a hub. Hubs which had the most success in maintaining membership placed emphasis on personal contact for participant recruitment and participant maintenance. Hubs took a range of approaches to increasing numbers and welcoming participants. And for many participants, just knowing a person or some people who were already in an existing hub was the primary reason they chose to attend in the first place.
I know for me it was knowing people already.
I'd been thinking about going along because I knew a few went and they were always saying how good it was. But when I decided to go, I phoned one of my friends who was already going for a few weeks and asked her to meet me so we could go in together. And I think if she hadn't been going that week, I don't know that I would have gone either.
So for this reason, One Hub encouraged a Bring a Friend session in which existing members were encouraged to bring someone to a showcase of the types of activities that were on offer within their particular hub, and through this were able to increase membership. Hubs which didn't use personal contact to recruit participants didn't have the same success as those that did. One committee member discussed the difficulties of increasing membership, even though they had put a lot of efforts and funds into advertising events, but really found that new membership only came when someone was personally asked to attend.
We had tried everything. Every event on the notice board, we made flyers, and I went round every single door in the fold and put them through the post box. And it made no difference. But if you were sitting talking to someone, like I was saying to my sister about a trip, and suddenly she's all, "Oh, can I go to that?" And I'm saying, "Yes, sure. Do you never see the list up on the wall?"
When a person didn't have an existing contact in a hub, which obviously when you're dealing with people who have been isolated for a long time, that is a persistent issue. So when someone didn't have that consistent or that existing participant, efforts were made to create welcome and to create comfort for a new attender. Hub committees created specific volunteer roles for participants, which was focused on welcome and integration for new members.
So they wanted someone just to be on the door when new people came in, get their name, make sure they have a place to sit, introduce them to the ones that they're sitting with. And when we go on trips, I went up and down the bus talking to people, bringing them out of themselves.
And developing these personal contacts and relationships was seen as an advantage of attendance at the hubs.
It's the people you meet. It doesn't matter what you do that week. It doesn't matter if it's knitting or a bus trip. The important thing is having a friend to sit beside, get you out of your flat, talk to someone. That's the big difference.
When looking at enablers to participation, it's important to make sure that you're tailoring those enablers towards specific people and specific types of people. So we did have an important consideration of gender differences and how we enable men and women to attend things. And men often identified themselves as during the interviews as not being natural joiners and suggested that maybe they needed additional support in joining a hub. Many male participants emphasised the importance of both a personal invitation or knowing someone who was already in attendance as a key factor in getting involved in a hub. At one focus group, there was a discussion on this.
Now you see here in our fold, the committee's all women, and the ones making the teas and coffees and doing the announcement is all women. As for the men, we're thinking, well, that's all for the women. Sure, they won't even do things that we want to do, you know.
So how do you fix that? More men on the committee?
Well, there's the thing. We need more men on the committee, but how do you get more men on the committee if they don't join up in the first place?
Well, what about you? How did you join?
Well, I had a friend went, and he went because his wife went. So for men, you need to know there's another man there who you can sit with and stop all these and just doing their knitting every week.
Another of the interviews stated,
For me, it was the other guys here pestering me to come down because they knew I was getting lonely. I'm so glad they did. It's not good for a person to spend all day, every day by themselves.
Another key enabler to attending hub was contributing to activities. So as has been talked about in the past, while relationships are very important, making sure you're doing things that people are interested in is crucial also. So there was a general sense that relationships were the most important, but participants often talked about the value of having roles and responsibilities within the hubs. This increased their sense of belonging, and it was deemed to be an important factor in promoting high-quality experiences within the hubs.
A few members had left and they needed some more, so she told me, You're up, we need you. And that was that. Now, I'd never imagined doing anything like that, but I'll tell you, I'm so glad I did. It gives you such a lift to be organising things and then seeing everyone enjoying it.
So, as Lorna mentioned earlier, we both looked at enablers. We've looked at and talked to people who were involved in hubs through focus groups, and we interviewed people who were involved in hubs. But we also interviewed people who had maybe had the one-to-one meetings but hadn't decided to go on and join in the group activity. And we were really interested to see what were the barriers to people in wanting to go and join and attend. So I want to take a wee look at that now. So our barriers to participation. A number of barriers have been identified, and again, we can divide them into a number of factors relating to both the older people themselves and then factors within the Hope project itself. We're starting with characteristics of the older person. And consistently throughout this service evaluation, development officers and participants framed non-participation as being a personal choice. And this was often understood as people putting up excuses for non-attendance.
Oh, they'll give you a list of reasons. I've no car. I'm not well. I've no clothes to wear. I've no friends there. And I can take each excuse and tell them, sure, I'll pick you up. What you're wearing's great. Sure, you know me, don't you? And they'll still go, no, it's not for me. It's just excuses. You have to keep at them.
It's just some people are not joiners. They're just shy of going places.
So what was framed by some as excuses was also understood in terms of long-term personality traits and lifestyle choices. One focus group, there was a discussion regarding non-joiners and exemplified kind of some of the varying opinions within that.
But you have those, and they never were joiners in their life. You can't force them. Everyone in the fold has the information, and if they want to come, they'll come.
Aye, but what about the ones that sit in their rooms all day and never see anyone? That's not healthy either. We can't force anyone to come. I'm not saying force anyone, but if she hadn't kept at me and got you to come for me, I would still be sitting in my own room now.
But for the ones that never come out, and we don't know them, how do we get them to come down here? You just can't knock on somebody's door, and if they say no, drag them down.
I know. It's just that there's that many people in this building that never come out, and it can't be good for them.
Personal characteristics of the older people, again, was identified as both an enabler for some and a barrier for others. And given their experience in engaging with over 200 participants in hub activities and then their long-term experience of community workers, the two development officers were placed in an excellent position to identify reasons as to why older people might not engage in social activities. Both development officers highlighted a number of factors which typically inhibited engagement in social activities, and these included an older person's low mood, low motivation and poor mental health. Additionally, the impact of low literacy and numeracy levels among some of the target population was highlighted, and a consequent concern for leafleting as a recruitment method was identified.
Leaflets are fine to remind a person of what you've told them, but I don't think that works. Community development by mail shot, and you might send a flyer out to them which you think is nice, attractive, glossy, well worded, a good size lettering and everything, but a person's ability to understand, what's this that's been sent to me and who's sending it? So that is an example of where follow-up is needed.
I would have got leaflets through the door plenty of times, but it wasn't until the visit started and the development officer asked me to come down one day that I ever did anything.
Relationships within the hub, as mentioned in the enablers, was crucial to getting people to go and stay, but in some cases it was also identified as a barrier. Interpersonal factors which impacted that uptake and the particular dynamics within a hub influenced sustained attendance. While existing hub members often made efforts to include newcomers, there were issues identified around people feeling isolated even whenever they had gone to hubs.
There are groups within groups of friends, and that is natural. For ones who've been going for a long time, but if a newcomer, it might be hard to break into that.
I went to a few, and I was introduced to all the ladies at the table, and they said hello, and then went on talking to each other, and not to me. But they all knew each other, And if nobody talks to you, a person feels lonely and moves away and maybe doesn't come back.
So in this context, social isolation and loneliness are viewed as different things. It's apparent that an objective increase in social contacts does not necessarily equate to a decrease in subjective feelings of loneliness. Or to take that out of academic speak, it is possible to feel lonely in a crowd. And the Hope Project, while bringing people together, needs to sort of the work on those those dynamics within a particular group. They still matter. The Hope Project didn't have a specific cross-community aim, although many of the hubs did take pride in the fact that their groups had a cross-community element, and to a large extent there was no real sectarian issues identified. It is important to note that one participant did identified feeling excluded for being perceived to be from the other side in a group which was in a single community area. However, with that group, with that person, and also the previous quote about the lady who talked about going to a few and saying hello and people not talking to her, it wasn't always clear as to whether that was actually what happened or whether that was just the perception of that particular person. And this is one of the areas, as Lorna mentioned, there is a limitation to how much research you can actually do with a short amount of time, short amount of people and resources. So that might be something interesting to look at, about how much of it is perception of feeling lonely as opposed to actually not being welcomed. Just wanted to highlight that. Timing was a crucial issue in identifying and approaching particular participants. An early intervention was seen as having a more likely positive outcome. This was deemed to be particularly relevant to those people who had complex needs.
There really is a small window to get people for this sort of thing. They need to be reasonably healthy and in reasonably good emotional states. Sometimes I think that referrals just come too late and the needs are too complex and the issues are too great for a group like this to work for some people.
So because we identified the fact that the hubs, while being an excellent end goal, so as Lorna mentioned, you had a development officer, and as I've mentioned, you had a development officer who met an individual person for a number of weeks and then encouraged them to come to a hub. This wasn't suitable for all people. So we had to look at what alternatives we could maybe present in regards to supporting those people for who group activities weren't suitable. So yes, recurrent theme throughout the evaluation was that many older people, despite encouragement, would not engage in group activities. And having a pathway to a befriending option might be a key factor in sustaining connection with some socially isolated individuals. A person-centred approach is a key aspect of the ethos of Engage with Age, and many of the individuals perceive their link with the development officer as being fundamental to their well-being. So for a number of people, while the end goal was to get them to go to a hub and join into social connections, for quite a number of the participants who chose not to engage with hubs, they felt that the meetings with the participant officers or the development officers was enough. That wasn't the role of the development officers, so that led to some small issues. So many older people who were referred to the project, the process of one-to-one meetings with the development officers, they became an end in themselves. And for those older people, social isolation was ameliorated in part by the one-to-one meetings with the development officer. Just older people, some of them just did not want to move beyond this stage to group activities.
We will miss him being around. He would have dropped in on the way home from work and we would have had a chat. He still gives me a ring every so often, but he's moved on now. He'll have a new job, so I'll miss his visits.
Strong attachments to the development officers that were expressed during some of the interviews highlight the clear need for structures around a befriending role, with guidance on boundaries and a process of disengaging from the one-to-one meetings and offering alternative befriending opportunities, which wasn't built into the Hope Project because that wasn't the goal of the Hope Project. Moreover, the development officers themselves were very aware of the importance. Sorry, I'm just going to stop for 2 seconds. I often write down words that I can spell but can't pronounce, and this sentence has one of those, so I'm going to have to change it as I go here. Development officers themselves were very aware of the importance of these relationships and took their responsibilities in this regard very seriously, investing considerable time and emotional energy into this role. I avoided my word entirely. Wonderful.
Well, it's the ones who didn't go to the groups at all that I worry about. Even if the hub stops, they have had a chance, to make friends, go for a coffee together. But the ones who never went to the hubs, they won't have any new friends or anyone new to talk to, and that's not good to think about. When you talk to them and bring them to the hubs and they say, no, I just want one-to-ones. And you know you might be the only person to darken their door in a fortnight. You can't say no to that. You know how lonely they are, and you can't say no, you're off my list. So you keep going. But you're that busy, and you're visiting after work and at the weekends, and it does take up a lot of your time. Now, breaking off, it was hard. Well, unless if you were to do it again, you were to give it a structured time scale of 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever, and you'd have a step for them to do, because then you'd just drop them. I couldn't do that. I was bringing them out for coffee, out for lunch, just to get them out, to get them active. So I don't know. I don't know if I do one-to-ones again.
Next key finding we looked at in regards to the HOPE project was sustainability. So the HOPE project, when it ended funding, the intention was that the hubs themselves that have been created would continue on. And it was successful with some and not successful with others, and there's a number of reasons for both. Service evaluation identified factors which promoted sustainability and factors which mitigated against it, and they will be addressed in turn. To start with those that promoted sustainability, timing and sustainability being inbuilt to the hubs from the start was crucial. As noted, the HOPE project was funded from 2012 to 2016, with a key aim, particularly in the last year, to establish independent hubs. And preparing for disengagement from the HOPE project and moving to an independent status as early as possible was considered crucial. In promoting sustainability and in partnership with the hub membership, the HOPE project set out an action plan to promote the hubs continuing existence. This action plan facilitated active engagement with the issue of sustainability from up to a year before the HOPE project actually ended. One example was given of an all-male hub, which appeared to be very successful at maintaining their hub after the support from HOPE had ended, and initiated plans quite early in the life of the group to ensure sustainability.
The development officer had always been saying, I'll only be here for so long, so you need to think about what happens after I'm away. And she'd organised us into a proper committee and helped us with the constitution and everything we needed. But then we had this weekend coming up clear, so I thought if she's away soon, we would need to see if we can organise anything at all. So we got together and decided we'll all head up to the north coast on the train, stick a couple of quid in for lunch, meet at a certain time, try not to lose anyone. And we did. And we rang her from the train. And I think she was jealous she was missing out. So next time we saw her, she said, great, so now you's organised the next thing. And from there we did bits and bits more till she was just coming and taking part. We were doing all the phoning, booking, everything. For the groups who responded less positively to the plan ahead for disengagement, they reported to have had a steep learning curve, with, for example, committee members admitted to feeling much less confident and hopeful in sustaining the hub once the project had come to an end.
Well, planning is definitely harder now. The development officer always had lots of ideas and knew lots of different things going on in the area, so every week was interesting. So I hope people don't get bored now.
The key area that was identified as being crucial in building sustainability was through developing skills and knowledge. To this end, the development officers facilitated training in setting up and running a hub. This training programme included information on things like committee structures and governance, how to apply for grants, tips on running activity programmes, and resources and equipment that Engage with Age has the ability to lend to groups. Feedback from these sessions was very positive, and individual hub members described ways in which they'd made use of this training. Having strong leadership was crucial. 6 of the 7 hubs that continued to operate after the end of the HOPE programme, those which continued to work successfully, had a number of common elements. Strong leadership, with 1 or 2 very clearly identified people to take charge of organising committee meetings and planning activities, raising funds and other essential tasks. And those groups seem to have established mechanisms and structures which ensured the continuation of the hub, creating constitutions, applying for funding by themselves, and continue the hub after disengagement with the development officers. Those barriers to sustainability, however, there were also barriers to sustainability. So the majority of hub projects have maintained and are self-managed, and the service evaluation identified key factors which both the development officers and hub members felt meant sustainability was less likely. And really the danger of dependency, I think, was one of the crucial ones. So one of the key strengths of having an organisational link with Engage with Age as the organisation which hosts the HOPE project was an information sharing and maintaining links to other groups and activities. Therefore, the development officer involvement was seen as a central strength of the HOPE project. While the majority of hubs are now independent and sustainable, it appeared that hub groups risked development dependency on the development officer.
Well, you saw today the development officer was able to tell us all about this Young at Heart thing next week, so we can organise going to that. But what happens when he's away? All these events could be going on and we don't know, so we'll be missing everything.
While existing relationships between hubs and shared contact details were considered important between already existing hubs, perhaps due to a lack of confidence or a lack of leadership, participants felt that without the development officer, this connection had the potential to be lost.
We would have met up with one of the other hubs every so often. They'd invite us to their things and we'd invite them to ours. But without the development officer phoning and finding out what's going on, we'll lose that link, which is sad, because there were some really lovely ladies in that other fold.
So the scheduled end of funding after 5 years of HOPE project was a significant concern for many of the hub members. Each hub was fully funded through the HOPE project, and that included paying for all activities, that was transport, all food, all materials needed, and it allowed people to attend the hubs that weren't even in their immediate areas, go to places, go to trips and places of interest, and take part in a very wide range of activities. With the end of the HOPE project and this funding coming to an end, hubs felt that they were significantly much more limited in what they were able to offer those attendees. For those who've been involved through the entire duration of HOPE, this was highlighted as a factor which did require considerable readjustment.
So we've been continuing. We still have our committee and we still have the Thursday meetings, and we do bingo and a quiz, and we collect £2 off the door and £2 for a ballot, and we save that up and organise wee trips. But now we can subsidise the ones that have paid in, but the ones who don't, they have to pay the full price, and there's a lot don't like that at all. You'll hear them saying, well, it was free before, but it can't be now. So the trips used to be a good way to get people involved, but when it's not free, you don't get as many show up, so you can't get people in that way anymore.
So as identified in this past quote, funding was a concern because having activities such as trips was a really great way of recruiting and expanding hubs. It was a major way of getting people's interest was through these big events.
The bus trips was always the big ones. Everybody wanted to go on the bus trips. You have a day out, you get your lunch, you get to see some part of the country you've never seen before, and it's all free. So that's always a big one for getting people in. They come to the bus trips, and you can say to them, well, next week we're doing such and such. It mightn't be as exciting as the bus trips, but they've come, they've had a nice day, they maybe made a new friend. So then you'll get some that'll come back the next week. So it was always a great way of getting new ones in. So I'd worry now that we won't have the money for the bus trips, the numbers will just get smaller.
So evidently this really is writing off the findings or the details of the findings. There's clearly some excellent learning from these interviews, and as Lorna identified, what was quite exciting about this evaluation was it wasn't just a case of us saying, here's a project, here's what worked, here's what didn't, is we really did delve into what some of the barriers and some of the enablers and what the issues with sustainability are. And they have resulted in some recommendations which were informed by the participants, which of course Engage with Age very crucially listens to the voice of older people. So these recommendations informed by participants will be looked at in just a little minute. But yeah, thank you very much. This concludes our views of the older people and our frontline workers, and I hope it's been interesting, and I hope we have a couple of questions about it later on. Thank you.